everybody. Congratulations. You've already graduated, now you're going to graduate again. I'd like an applause for the Columbia University Jazz Ensemble. These are amazing young players. They're our fellow students. So welcome to everybody, to graduating students, parents, friends, our dedicated faculty and staff, and our guest, Tony Kushner. We'll say more about him soon. First, I need to congratulate the class of 2011. With graduating students representing 31 countries, we've marveled at your brilliance and your talent and your warmth and your compassion and your camaraderie and your achievements. We have immersed ourselves in your work, we've bonded with you as our students, and we bond with you now as our colleagues, and thus we're very sad to see you go. But we are also happy because we know that you are extremely well prepared to enter your professions, and we're certain that you're going to make us very proud. We were thrilled to see your accomplishments throughout your time with us, and most recently at Panoply 2011, where so many of you shared readings and performances and screenings and exhibitions, and thank you to the IAC for coordinating all that. And we saw you at your brilliantly directed theater thesis plays and the actors' thesis productions. And at the New Plays Now Festival at Three-Legged Dog in Tribeca. At the Film Festival at the IFC, Directors Guild of America, McGraw-Hill Theaters, and here at Miller for a first ever student choice evening with a miraculous range of new short films and screenplays. We have enjoyed the beautifully produced Writer's Thesis Anthology with selections from every second-year MFA student. And we've marveled at the spectacular, and might I say monumental, visual arts thesis exhibition at the Fisher Landau Center in Long Island City. You are a really easy audience, I just want you to know. Don't make me laugh. Okay. These events have been thrilling, and not only to us, but to the thousands, really thousands of people who attended them, the thousands of people who will read your work and who have appreciated them and appreciated you and will continue to. As graduates, you'll be joining an incredibly illustrious group of alumni who have gone on to extraordinary achievements all around the world. And this year, the overall successes of our students and graduates is once again really overwhelming. Too extravagant to enumerate here, so I've chosen just a few representations from each of the programs. So in film, Lisa Cholodenko won Best Screenplay for The Kids Are All Right. These are all alums. The film is distributed by Focus Features, which is headed by film professor James Seamus. The Kids Are All Right was also nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Screenplay. The Spirit Awards Robert Altman Award was given to the one film's director, casting director, and its ensemble cast, and this was awarded to Nicole Hovesener, who, for her film Please Give. 4 alumni films were selected to screen at the New Directors New Film Festival, presented by the Film Society of Lincoln Center and the Museum of Modern Art, and the 2 features were Man Without a Cell Phone and Outbound, and 2 shorts, Match and Miyuki, all of our alumni in film. In theater arts, the Theater Arts Program alumni collaboration When Last We Flew won a GLAAD Media Award in March. The play was written, produced, and marketed all by Columbia alums. 2 playwriting alumni have been nominated for Outer Circle Awards for outstanding new off-Broadway plays. Bathsheba Duran for Kin and Tommy Nobili for Blood from a Stone. And in visual arts, in the first week of May, 6 visual arts alumni had solo exhibitions running in Manhattan galleries. Sean Dack, Dasha Shishkin, Matt Keegan, Hillary Harnish-Fager, Nicola Lopez, Peter Mandrajeff. and 4 students and 1 alumna have been awarded 2012 Emerging Artist Fellowships from Socrates Sculpture Park. Nadja Frank, Jesse Greenberg, Nick Paparone, Walter Benjamin Smith, who are all graduating today, and alumna Jessica Siegel. In writing, 4 writing alumni were chosen as the New Yorker Magazine's 20 under 40 fiction writers worth watching: Rivka Galkin, Dana Mengetsu, Karen Russell, and Wells Tower. And 2010 alumna Parul Segal was awarded the prestigious Nona Balakian Citation for Excellence in Reviewing at this year's National Book Critics Circle Awards. So these are just recent alums, and some of you students who are sitting here today, lots of achievements this year. Our alumni are everywhere, working hard every day, producing extraordinary work. In a short time, all of you graduating today will become part of the great story of success that is the School of the Arts. Remember, please keep in touch. Tell us about your accomplishments so that we can brag about you to friends and colleagues at the university and to the rest of the world. And I can mention you at graduation ceremonies like this one. And we also want to continue to be helpful to you in any way we can. You will always be part of the School of the Arts and of Columbia University in the city of New York, no matter where your lives take you, no matter where your work takes you. The student body in total represents 48 countries. We cherish the breadth and depth of this mix. We have learned so much from your presence. We now await the world's recognition of your talents. Before we begin today our program, I would like to acknowledge those people without whom many of you could never have completed this most essential part of your work, and that is your parents and your families and your friends. So let's have the families and the friends of our graduates please stand. And now let's ask our really brilliant faculty, wonderful artists all, who have mentored all of you graduating today and your work with love and dedication and deep concern, to please stand. We're the faculty. Over there, on the left, in that mix of faculty, is Richard Locke. And I want to give a special acknowledgement to writing faculty Richard Locke, who was chosen this year to receive one of the 2011 Presidential Awards for Outstanding Teaching. Now, these awards are from the students to you, so it's particularly meaningful and very coveted among the faculty. I want to read just very, very brief the closing part of the citation, which Richard will be online. Richard will receive. This is what was said about him. This is just the last 2 paragraphs. The value of your unstinting, supportive efforts can be gauged by the scores of books you have had a hand in shepherding towards publication, yet you are modest, declared one student, in the way of those who demand the excellence of others by practicing it themselves. In all, you have given your students the invaluable experience of a hands-on editor, the erudition of a scholar, and the engagement of a critic. It is our pleasure to confer on you the university's highest educational award, the 2011 Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching. We're very proud. Richard, where are you? Now I'd like to thank the staff who helped make this program possible today. First, Layla Mayer and Anthony Keene from our Extraordinary Office of Student Affairs. To this I add Cheku Kamara, Kenny Wong, Hannah Seifu, and of course Dave Beeman, our wonderful directors of academic administration from each program who are on stage with us, Bill Wadsworth, Emma Balaz, Julie Rossi, and Sarah Mason. Those in communications and events, Ann Burt, Miriam Bayer, Daisy Nam, Joe Turner-Lynn, and all those at Miller, as well as those at the Neiman Center and the Dean's Office. I'd also like to thank faculty Chris Washburn and once again the Columbia University Jazz Ensemble, fabulous group that give their time to us every year. We thank, well, maybe we should applaud. Of course, we thank all the student volunteers, many who have helped, as well as our coordinators of the event. Our director of the ceremony today is Ashley Kelatata, as well as our stage manager, Amy Steinman. Where are they? These are theater students, and they've helped us enormously. It looks a lot better now that we have theater people involved in theater. The commencement assistant, Suzanne Moses, and always I would like to thank Dean Barbara Batchelor and my partner in crime, our amazing Dean of Academic Administration, Jana Wright. Okay, let's begin. Opening our program today is our guest speaker, Tony Kushner, a fellow Columbian, a graduate of Columbia College, and awarded last year a Presidential Alumni Medal of Excellence at graduation. He's one of the greatest playwrights this country or any country has ever produced. Courageous, brilliant, provocative, a man of honor and of great humor, a great advocate for freedom of expression in all forms. It is an honor to have him with us today, and to introduce Tony Kushner, we've asked Arnold Aronson, chair of the Theater Arts Program, author of many books on scenography, set design, and theater history, to introduce him to you. Arnold Aronson.
Theater people should save that till I introduce you later on. In discussing whom we should invite to speak at today's graduation, we said, let's get someone quiet and non-controversial. I'm sorry, that's CUNY. Of course, that is precisely what we did not want, which is why we invited playwright Tony Kushner. This is a school of the arts, and what is the purpose of art? If not to provoke, stimulate, challenge, and question, to make you think. Our speaker this afternoon has said that going to the theater raises the audience's collective IQ 25 points. This cannot be an absolute truth. I have seen plays that do the opposite. But certainly when you see a play by Tony Kushner, one of the most extraordinarily intellectual playwrights of the contemporary theater, your mind is stretched in new directions. Some 13 or 14 years ago, I had the pleasure of hosting an evening with Arthur Miller on this stage, and now I have the honor of introducing Tony Kushner. For me personally, to be able to introduce two of the greatest playwrights in American theater history is astonishing and humbling. But the fact that it is these two playwrights is significant because they share a certain sensibility, intellectual breadth, political engagement, and view of morality. Both are concerned with the complexities and contradictions of individual responsibility, with the consequences of human actions, with the state of society, with making the world a better place for the future, with the ineluctable entanglements of politics, economics, and human relations, and, lest we forget, about love and family. Most important, I think, they tackle big themes. American theater, with only a few notable exceptions, has been a small theater. Our writers and audiences alike seem all too comfortable with petty family squabbles, individual psychology, and what happens in the bedroom and the kitchen. But too often such plays are incapable of moving beyond the confines of those rooms. Tony Kushner's plays cannot be contained within four walls. Even when he creates a room, he has an angel crash through the walls, sending plaster and dust everywhere. His most recent play, The Intelligent Homosexual's Guide to Capitalism and Socialism with a Key to the Scriptures, is actually set in a Brooklyn brownstone, mostly in a living room and a few other locales. But despite its apparent domestic trappings, it is not a small play. It deals with all the nouns in the title, plus an extensive disquisition on labor unions, the economics of sex, multi-generational family dynamics, real estate, and very detailed instructions on how to commit suicide by asphyxiation. Probably most people know Tony Kushner for the two-part Angels in America, But like all artists or performers who burst onto the scene, there was a long gestation. By my count, there were 14 other plays before Angels. The play that put him on the map was A Bright Room Called Day, in which can be seen many of the ideas and themes that pervade later work. The play is set during the collapse of the Weimar Republic in Germany and the rise of Hitler, which is set in counterpoint to the presidency of Ronald Reagan and the implementation of Republican policies. But it is not a play about facile comparisons. It is about the need of the individual in society to take responsibility for what happens in that society. And I must mention my favorite play from the pre-Angels period, Hydriotaphia from 1987. A mere 167 pages, it deals with a minor historical figure from England during the time of Cromwell. Who but Kushner could create a play from such material? As you know, his other work includes essays, musicals, opera, and the film Munich, directed by Steven Spielberg. Finally, Iho, as the current play is sometimes called, has garnered glowing reviews, but if there has been a criticism, it is that the play is sprawling, the brilliantly overlapping dialogue in the family scenes is hard to follow, as it is in all our families, and some characters speak in intellectually dense paragraphs. One of the main characters, who has been working on his dissertation for 30 years, says, "I'm afraid of the delete key." Presumably, this is Tony Kushner himself speaking, and if so, I, for one, hope that he never gets over that fear. There is so much brilliant work coming out of his mind and conveyed to us through the mouths of fascinating characters that I will take his sprawling, challenging plays any day. Tony Kushner.
Thanks. Thank you, Arnold. That was amazing. Disregarding a commencement speaker's principal responsibility, which is the dispensing of good advice and the last-minute reinforcing of ideals towards which you already graduated students apparently ought to and hopefully will aspire after you've left, as you all will do after this ceremony, the groves of academia and are out in the jungle, being assaulted by wild beasts and poisonous stinging insects underfoot, ensnared in vines that produce hideous rashes on contact, struggling onwards towards those ideals and aspirations against the dawning realization that, as your hunger pains worsen and you blister and shrivel from exposure, although you have learned much of immense value about the virtues and drawbacks of digicams versus 35mm Panaflexes, and pursue acting objectives and building dramatic narrative and the technical challenges of lithography, you have perhaps acquired insufficient skill in pursuing and trapping and preparing food or building shelter. Disregarding my responsibility as your commencement speaker to remind you of the ideals you should have in mind while you're being devoured by an inhospitable ecosystem hungry for the minerals and proteins and fatty acids you contain, disregarding the unreasonable expectation that I will present myself to you with a reasonably straight face as an exemplar of what a working artist ought to be. It's unreasonable because I have just opened a show, have another one beginning previews, and rewriting a film script, and I wish I was dead. I'm electing instead to begin by confessing to a bad habit. I've stopped reading newspapers. I used to read at least one or two newspapers every day, but over the course of the past several years, I've slackened, and now I almost never do, unless something truly horrendous or truly extraordinary happens. It goes without saying, we all know it, but I'll say it anyway, the truly horrendous happens much more often than the truly extraordinary, and the truly extraordinary is often adulterated with potential to transform by the next morning's edition of the New York Times. And why beat about the bush? When I say newspaper, I mean the New York Times. There used to be other daily newspapers, but now there's mainly the Times. There are also those other things that seem like newspapers, and they're printed on sheet paper and they get your fingers inky if you hold them for too long, but they're not actually newspapers at all, just newsprint camouflage for the sucker-tipped tentacles of one of the scariest of all the jungle predators. Oh, and also there's the Daily News, God bless it, and if you live on Long Island, Newsday, both of which the aforementioned predator hasn't consumed or killed, but which perhaps have settled too much for survival, which is, in the long run, never an accomplishment impressive enough. The truly extraordinary, as I was saying, is usually adulterated with potential to transform into the truly horrendous, while the truly horrendous, although theoretically occasion for the opportunities with which crises theoretically present us, is most often manifestly pregnant with the potential for the even more horrendous. When compelled to, I will read the newspaper, but mostly I avoid it. This is a terrible thing. When I have taught playwriting, I've always told my students that they have to read newspapers every day, and this is very good advice, and you should follow it even though I seem to have strayed. I've become very busy, and I'm married to a journalist who reads everything, every newspaper, every magazine, on and offline, every day in like half an hour. I'm a slow reader, and I've become a terrible wimp about assimilating new horrors, and so I've become preoccupied with history instead, with old horrors. And so I've lapsed opportunistically into waiting for my husband to tell me what's going on. This means, for instance, that I was 2 days later than everyone else in learning that former governor and fellow artist Arnold Schwarzenegger is perhaps not an exemplar of the kind, nor fit to dispense the sort of advice that recommends him as a commencement speaker, though, let's be honest, and admit that if he was your commencement speaker, all the other schools at Columbia would envy you. He would be electrifying, even if not edifying, and even if on certain words to which he still adds umlauts a little hard to understand. Many years ago, I met a psychologist who had written a book that was an important contribution to the period when the feminist revolution broadened and sharpened its radical reconsideration of the nature of gender. This psychologist shocked me when I met her by telling me that she never read a newspaper, hadn't in years, because she'd realized that her friends, her community, would keep her abreast of everything important that happens, and even better, that the hard work of parsing the news, reading with a critical eye that discerns and accounts for ideology's inevitable and inevitably distorting contribution, would be done by her community, that her community would provide her with the news and at the same time a trustworthy, ideologically consonant critique of the news, and that meant she could free the time the news consumed, free the time news consuming and parsing required, time which I have no doubt the feminist psychologist put to excellent use. But you see how risky this is, admitting to flaws, the license it gives to others to sin. I admired her book, and meeting her was exciting, and I listened closely to what she said, and though I was highly skeptical back then of the probity of depending on others for news, even of the morality of relying on others to do your work for you, to say nothing of the potentially perilous narrowing that must follow through too thoroughly encloistering oneself with trustworthy ideological consonant critique. Consider, for instance, the recent poll results indicating that fully 84% of all Fox News viewers believe that Michelle Bachmann is presidential material. Not really. I just made that poll up. Remember, I make things up for a living, and also I don't read newspapers. Though I bet the percentage of Fox News viewers who think Michelle Bachmann is presidential material is scarily high, so you get my point. I was skeptical years ago when the psychologist told me she didn't read newspapers, and I wonder now if all those years ago she planted some permission in my head. All of this is by way of asking whether you saw in the New York Times yesterday the story about fake orchestras traveling throughout the United States. I saw it because the Times editors saw fit to put it above the fold on the front page, a rare thing for a story about the arts, usually reserved for obituaries of very famous movie stars, and this is appropriate. Of course, when Elizabeth Taylor died, above the fold billing seemed insufficient. They should have canceled publication for the day, and we should have stayed home, all of us, and sat Shiva for 8 days. But yesterday, it wasn't a movie star making front-page headlines. It was these fake orchestras that a great name in classical musical programming is apparently fobbing off on classical music presenting organizations all over the country. You book an orchestra, billing itself as the Dublin Philharmonic, and you get a bunch of Azerbaijanis masquerading as Irishmen. I found it heartening that the Times deems this a problem significant enough to position it so prominently, occupying more front-page space than a story about the way the Japanese government concealed nuclear risks from its citizens for decades, or the IMF guy who is accused of rape, or the happy news that the New York State Attorney General is beginning to investigate the way the banks raped the economy, or the entrance into a New York House race of a Tea Party candidate who believes Mexican immigrants will start a second civil war, or, below the fold, a very compelling story about the rise in thefts, sometimes violent thefts, from beauty salons of human hair, which, who knew, is expensive. I found I found it heartening to learn from the positioning of this story that there are still classical music presenters, and I suppose enough people in the country who want to hear orchestras that a consumer advisory warning, the Tchaikovsky Orchestra from St. Petersburg you bought tickets to hear doesn't exist. It's just some fly-by-night ad hoc collation of pickup musicians from, I don't know, Boise, Idaho. On this scale, a scale usually reserved for E. coli and the spinach crop, is merited. Probably it's because I was coming to talk to you today, coming back to my alma mater to speak to soon-to-be graduates of its august School of the Arts, that this story caught my attention, compelled me to break my phobic avoidance of newspaper reading, to read past the jump, to go inside all the way to page A19. I think I noticed this story because I knew that I was coming today to talk to a bunch of artists, which is what you are, probably what you have been since your internal structures first began to coalesce, and then somehow at some critical juncture failed to completely coalesce. If they had completely coalesced, let's face it, you'd be graduating from the School of Architecture or Law or Medicine, and you'd probably have a commencement speaker doing his or her job and advising you, describing ideals, and your parents, grandparents, and siblings wouldn't be wrangling quite the same emotional cocktail of enormous pride at your awesome accomplishments, mixed with long suppressed and now mounting panic about your employment possibilities. But I knew I was coming here today and I wanted to bring you good news. I mean good news specifically for artists, for the arts. My graduation gift to you, if not role modeling or sound advice or inspiring words about principles and goals, then at least encouragement. There is plenty of good news in the paper, it turns out. For instance, on page A18, I read that White House employees want to unionize, something about which no one in my community had informed me, and that the Obama administration, when asked, stated forthrightly that it supports the right of workers to organize, leading me to consider that maybe it's time to start reading the newspaper again. I think I really stopped because of the Bush administration, which seems to me a change over the likely response of the previous administration, which would, I'm reasonably sure, being told that White House employees wanted to unionize, called in the Blackwater Corporation and contracted with Halliburton to construct interrogation cells in the East Wing Library, but I digress. That we have an administration willing to endorse and enunciate a workers' right to organize seems to me good news, but not necessarily for artists. In saying this, I reveal that I am primarily a playwright forbidden by antitrust laws from unionizing, and only secondarily a screenwriter, proud member of the Writers Guild, a great union, except sometimes when it comes to arbitrating credit, but I digress, or in terms of offering same-sex partner benefits on the same terms that it offers to legally married couples, but I digress again. The Writers Guild is a great union. Those of you who are television and film screenwriters may already belong or soon will, and I will see you on the picket lines, unless, of course, I have a play in production. Anyway, casting about for good news to offer you, my fellow artists, I seized on this story. There's sufficient cash out there for serious art for it to be worth someone's while to cobble together fake orchestras and send them hither and yon. It's not exactly the kind of good news for artists to turn cartwheels over, not genuinely great news for artists like the above-the-fold front page banner headline announcing that the budget for the National Endowment for the Arts has been increased tenfold to $2 billion, something equivalent to like 1 nanosecond of the national daily debt service for the financial bailout, or equivalent to the cost of the first 10 seconds of materiel dropped on Baghdad. It's not great news like that, and that headline didn't happen because that hasn't happened. News that the arts are going to be adequately funded, affordable, and accessible, that the arts are now to be included in that list of social essentials, that list of the indispensable constituent parts of any civilization worthy of the name, with the repudiation of the insanity of free market ego-anarchist idolatry such funding implies. This isn't news like that, but it's the best I can do. One of your number today is my former assistant and current dramaturg, writing partner, and savior and friend, Antonia Grilikas-Lasky, and she told me that, and when we were talking about the speech a couple of days ago, she told me that someone else of your number, a friend of hers, had told her to tell me that I should be inspiring, or at least fun, because you're all sort of depressed. I imagine if that's true, it's in part because it's sad to leave a place you've profited from being in and probably even enjoyed, and your professors who have taught you with such perspicacity, generosity, and deep concern will now be your competitors, eager to see you fail. No. Not not in the least. God forgive me for saying that. I didn't mean that. What's the matter with me? Your teachers, your elders, those who have come before are and always will be on your side mostly, overjoyed to see life, art, human understanding born confidently and daringly into the future, a future which we who are old will not get to see, by you who will, we know, ascend to a mastery while we decline, and we're almost entirely pleased that this is so. We know that it is mortality itself and not your triumphs that will bury us. So I know I speak for your faculty in saying that they will continue to be there for you as your parents have been, but as with your parents, so with your teachers, relationships change with changing circumstance, and liberation is always accompanied by loss, and departure, liberation, is always a bittersweet thing. So maybe that's what's making you blue, as well as the economic uncertainties heretofore alluded to, attendant upon graduating and starting a life, a career as a working artist. And ordinarily, I'd be worried that I'm not the harbinger of better news, another responsibility of a commencement speaker abrogated. This is a joyous day, a day of celebration. I always look forward to speaking at commencements. I'm slightly given to depression myself, and commencements are reliable circumstances in which to turn up if you're looking for a contact high. And also, I'm cheap and I like an upbeat, easy audience, and audiences at commencements are as upbeat and easy as opening night audiences, and even better than opening night audiences, because you probably haven't had too much cheap champagne yet, and there's no intermission during which you can take out your smartphones and find out if the reviews are already in. And really and truly, I'm very honored to have been asked to share the day with you, and I don't want to bum anyone out, but on the other hand, I'm speaking to artists. We have a special relationship to depression, to bad news. Of course you're depressed, Antonia's woebegone friend, whichever one of you, he or she, is. I have to say that I don't think any of you look depressed, not in the least. You look decidedly fabulous. Of course, you and your fellow graduates are somewhat depressed. You're graduating from the School of the Arts, not, well, business school. Your faculty knew what it was doing when they admitted you. Your parents knew what they were doing when they passed on their depressive tendencies through inspiration or genetics. They were doing their part to ensure that the world doesn't run out of artists, because God help the world if it does. We are here, I think, in part, not to report the world's agony, though it's important to do that, and art can do that as well as other things. We're here, I think, not to profit off the world's agony, though, of course, during dark nights of the soul, who among us hasn't worried that that's what we do? We should worry. But whether we profit or what we do with the profits, we're here also to prophesy, to try to make some kind of large sense of the agony of the world in the name of the future, in the name of hope. Artists, as Auden described it while memorializing William Butler Yeats, sing of human unsuccess in a rapture of distress. Artists, despite our susceptibility to nervous afflictions, our paranoid tendencies, our penchant for self-aggrandizement and its concomitant self-pity, our undeserved reputation as newspaper and news-avoidant, airheaded delusionals, are tough people in my experience. You have to be tough to create. Just ask God. You have to be tough to create, especially when you aren't working within the closed confines of a tautology, when the means may be mastered, but never the ends, when it's not given to you to even know the ends, to refuse to take up the means before the ends are clear, when what you are attempting to create is finally only alive, it seems to me, if unfinished, only a true deep success if it attains the unfinishable, the incompletable, if what you create is neither a thing nor a fixed message nor an ossified meaning, but rather a new and attainable process, an open-ended generator of meaning, a goad to understanding, a guide to wisdom rather than knowledge, uncertainty rather than arrogance, when what you hope to employ in your work is the power of deepest affinity rather than of force, you have to be tough to do the kind of work Auden describes in that poem about Yeats. He writes, "Follow, poet, follow right to the bottom of the night. With your unconstraining voice, still persuade us to rejoice. With the farming of a verse, make a vineyard of the curse. Sing of human unsuccess in a rapture of distress. In the deserts of the heart, let the healing fountain start. In the prison of his days, teach the free man how to praise." I'm always a little uncomfortable since I make my living as an artist praising what we do. I've always felt that self-seriousness in artists is one of the surest ways to do your art self in, not to mention one of the surest ways to make sure people avoid you. In the same poem, Auden writes of Yeats, "You were silly like us," a judgment Yeats frequently made about himself. Auden hastens to add, "Your gift survived it all." And by all, he means all Yeats's silliness. While I wouldn't want to argue ever with Auden, it seems to me that Yeats's silliness wasn't only the adversary of his gift, it was also an ingredient, an aspect of his genius. Auden catalogues Yeats's silliness, women like Lady Gregory, Irish politics. He might have added Yeats's penchant for mystical nonsense, in which, of course, he joins the splendid and splendidly silly company of William Blake, wholeheartedly plunging into sublime silliness out of which very serious, profound, and beautiful things, something almost divine, emerge. And Lady Gregory, after all, gave Yeats a number of good lines, including a magnificent articulation of the essential article of anyone who professes faith in democracy. "Never have I now, nor at any time, complained of the people." Yeats, in the poem The People, in which that line is quoted, tells Lady Gregory that she would complain if she had a mind as analytical as his. Reasonable as this reply is, because he was a great poet committing to telling the truth, Yeats goes on to say that his heart leapt up at her words, and 9 years later, writing the poem, he tells us that, recounting her words, his head sinks abashed. This is probably why I would have been drawn to the story of the fake orchestras currently menacing concertgoers throughout the land, even if I wasn't hunting for good news to deliver. Beyond the potential that the story implies might exist for remuneration as an artist if you know how to work or are willing to participate in a good con, and despite the censure appropriate to producers who lie to their public, I have to confess feeling a desire to attend the concerts of these fake orchestras, an attraction to the complexities of that experience. If this is not what it claims to be, what is it? If these players are not Dubliners, who are they? Is what I'm hearing their approximation of what they imagine I'm expecting to hear? And how are these assumptions and expectations of expectations arrived at? What does all this mean? I wonder if, in fact, there mightn't be a value, aesthetic and perhaps a market value as well, for a series of misleadingly named orchestras, and for other artists, too, in other disciplines, operating under misnomers. Among the pleasures we take from art is the very important pleasure of being deceived, which is a way of cathecting how unceasingly existence presents us with deception, with illusion, with dreams that seem real. The pleasurable engagement with which serves to create in ourselves an absolutely absolutely central competence of seeing both illusion and reality simultaneously, of reflecting the bafflement and paralysis these visions can provoke, of claiming, in the face of this, an agile soul and the name of action. Art has its indirect powers. Surely we all believe that, or we wouldn't make, or for that matter, consume art. As John Ashbery wrote in an essay about the painter Fairfield Porter, beyond the narrow confines of the subject, only one of a number of equally important elements in the work of art, the secret business of art, gets done according to mysterious rules of its own. The secret business of art, I think, is the awareness of meaning. Meaning is never complete. Meaning tells us the truth is never complete. Meaning is the suspension in which violent certainty is held and dissolved. Meaning is never finished, never arrived at conclusively, never exhausted, never legible to literalists and fundamentalists. To literalists and fundamentalists, meaning is a closed book, the book a mere talisman, a fetish object. Meaning is for people who can handle being overwhelmed without keeling over. Meaning is for people who can resist the urge to slither away. Maybe that's why artists have such trouble with deadlines. Meaning resists symmetry, meaning resists closure, meaning is impervious to sound bites and is never singular, never without its opposites, transforming itself into history. Comfort with the possibility of powerlessness may be an essential concomitant to being an artist, with its possibility, not with its certainty, hopefully, not with powerlessness itself. The work of artists is, I think, to find what's humanly possible, possibility's furthest reaches. But perhaps the work of citizens is to find what's immediately possible. I can't tell you how your work as artists contributes directly to your work as citizens, if in fact it does contribute directly at all. If in fact certitude and directness are not as inimical to art as despair is to politics. I've been writing plays for nearly 2 decades, and I only know, or at least I think I know, that only in activism in activism, organizing, arguing, fundraising, electioneering, can one exercise with some small degree of certainty one's agency as an actor in politics on the historical stage. Politics, as they say, is the art of the possible. Kenneth Koch wrote a poem called The Art of the Possible. It begins, the art of the possible credo, vanishing is impossible, lasting is impossible, being in two places at once is impossible, speaking the entire truth is impossible, instantly knowing Spanish is impossible, living in the midst of 10,000 panes of glass is impossible, being simultaneously masked and unmasked is impossible, except in art. Art is the art of the possible. I don't want to argue with Kenneth Koch any more than W.H. Auden. Koch taught me when I was an undergraduate at Columbia, and I owe him a great debt as a writer and also as someone who loves literature. But I propose that politics is the art of the possible, while art is the art of the possibility of the impossible. As you are adepts of a mystery, go forth and deepen the mystery. Make the impossible seem possible, bring heaven down to earth. As you are citizen adepts of a democracy that is still a democracy in more than name, but not, I fear, unless we work very, very hard for very much longer, you have to learn as well the art of the possible and practice it in the months and years ahead. As you are adepts of a divine mystery, and obviously pretty amazing adepts at that, or you wouldn't be here graduating from the Columbia School of the Arts on this great day with your parents and grandparents and spouses and children, all of whom are shepping nachas. As you are gifted and remarkable and soon to be graduated adepts with diplomas and degrees, make images for the world, show the world what the heart of it is, tell the world what it means. I think we are lucky. We have passed through a terrible time. There are terrible times still to come, no doubt, but we're lucky. This seems to me a time of hope in America and the world, a time when America and the world may understand the art you make. Never, as Lady Gregory admonished Yeats, never complain of the people and read newspapers. And make art already. Commence already. Thank you for inviting me to share today with you. A million billion mazzles to you all. We count ourselves very lucky to watch what you have in store.